Hey, good morning and peace to everybody in the name of Jesus. Peace to everybody that may be tuned in this morning. And peace to everybody that may be tuned in at a later time. Um, Back this morning with another lesson. Start by saying thank the Lord for allowing us another day, another chance to work out our salvation and new mercies this morning. I'm back with another lesson this morning. The title of this lesson this morning is Humility, Remove the Pride. Humility, remove the pride. And this is a lesson that we all need because you know pride can tend to enter into our minds at any time. Pride is something that is very subtle and it's can be hard to recognize at certain times, but it's something that we must be constantly on the lookout for, and it's something that we must be constantly removing out of our lives, which is pride. And pride can come in many different forms. Pride can look it can be seen in many different ways, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful because the world around us teaches us that, hey, it's okay to be prideful. It's okay to be proud. You should take pride in everything you do. And that can be, there's nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong with going hard and different things that we do. There's nothing wrong with doing the best that we can in things that we do. But, we got to make sure that there is no pride in our life, because when pride seems to sick in, then we don't get the correction that we need. We aren't able to accept reproof and correction and instruction. And we have to make sure that, hey, we don't have this pride in our life, that we are humble. The Lord wants us to be humble. He wants us to be lowly in mind and humble. So it's important that we seek humility, that we put on humility each and every day so that we can take the correction that we need. So we're going to get right into this lesson. We're going to start out in Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs chapter 15. And we're going to pick it up at verse 31 to 33. Proverbs 15 and verse 31 to 33. Proverbs 15 and verse 31 and 33. And like I said, the title of the lesson once again is humility. Humility. We're just dealing with humility, remove the pride. Humility, remove the pride. Proverbs 15 and verse 31, it reads, "The ear that heareth the reproof of life abideth among the wise." So, when you're dealing with being humble, you got to have an ear to hear. You got to be more ready to listen than you are to speak. That could be a characteristic of being humble. Verse 32, "He that refuseth instruction despiseth his own soul, but he that heareth reproof getteth understanding." All right. And that's another aspect of humility, you know, not willing to listen or willing to listen. You got not willing to listen, that's that pride, and willing to hear reproof. Hey, you're gonna get understanding. And that's the humility aspect of it. Verse 33, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom." The fear of the Lord, and that's something that's been taken off the table. That's something that's been taken off the table. And the reason that has been taken off the table is because people are prideful. People are prideful. Satan has deceived the whole world. He's the ultimate king of pride. And he has deceived the world into thinking that nobody has to fear God. Nobody has to fear God. That's what the world is thinking. But it says the fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom. And before honor is humility. Before you get any honor, hey, you got to humble yourself. We got to remove the pride. We got to be humble. All right. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. Let's keep going. Let's go over here to Proverbs chapter 18. Proverbs chapter 18. Proverbs chapter 18. And we're going to read a few verses here. One verse here. Proverbs 18. And we're going to read verse 12. Proverbs 18. And we're going to look at verse 12. Proverbs 18 and verse 12. And we're just dealing with humility, being humble, but, removing the pride. And we saw that, hey, before you get any honor is humility. Let's look at it again. Proverbs 18 and one verse 12. It says, before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Right? So before that destruction comes, the heart of man is haughty. He's puffed up, prideful, not willing to listen, not willing to get any instruction or hear any reproof. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. That's why the title of the lesson is, hey, remove the pride, humility. And this is something that we have to keep in mind, is that we have to be humble. That pride can seep in. We don't want to hear, but we got to make sure that we stay humble, because, hey, destruction is on the other side of that pride. Destruction is on the other side of that pride. Let's go over here to Proverbs 11. And it's just a quick lesson, just a quick reminder that we need to be humble. A quick reminder, be humble. Proverbs 11. We're going to pick it up to verse 2. Proverbs 11, quick reminder that, hey, we got to stay humble. We got to stay humble, because on the other side of that humility is pride. And we want to make sure that, hey, that pride doesn't seep into our hearts. It doesn't seep into our hearts. So once again, humility, remove the pride. Look at this, Proverbs 11 and verse 2. It say, when pride cometh, then cometh shame. So, hey, when you decide to not be humble, when you decide to not be correct, and when you decide to go about doing things the way that, hey, that you decide to do it, and you don't listen to the Lord or follow his instruction, it says, when pride cometh, then cometh shame. And, hey, shame is on its way. Shame is on its way. But with the lowly is wisdom. And that's why I titled the lesson, humility, remove the pride. Humility, we got to be humble, be lowly in mind, because with the lowly is wisdom. So let's make sure we remove the pride so that the shame won't come. Proverbs 25. Proverbs 25. Proverbs 25 and verse 6 and 7. Proverbs 25, verse 6 and 7. And we're just dealing with pride. How we got to get rid of the pride, that we need to be humble before the Lord. God resists, the proud, but he gives grace unto the humble. We're going to move out of this Proverbs here in a second. Proverbs 25 and verse 6. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king, and stand not in the place of great men. For better it is, verse 7, for better it is that it be said unto thee, come up hither. Like he's telling you, don't just be so quick to put yourself in the high place. Don't be so quick to put yourself in the presence of the king and stand in the place of great man. But he said, for it is better that it be said unto thee, come up hither. It's better for that brother or that sister to be invited up than us to just put ourselves up into that high state. Come up hither, than that thou shouldest be put lower in the presence of the prince whom thine eyes have seen. All right. Be humble. Don't be so quick to put yourself up in high places. Let's go over to Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14, let's look at this example from Jesus. Luke chapter 14, and we're going to look at verse 7. Luke chapter 14 and verse 7. Luke chapter 14 and verse 7. Let's look at what the Lord said about, hey, being humble and how, don't be so quick to put yourself up into the high hills. Don't be so quick to put yourself up, into the high places. Be humble. Let somebody else call you up. Now we're just looking at, hey, when you're dealing with humility, characteristics and how you should move about when you are humble. Luke chapter 14, verse 7, it say, and he put forth the parable to those which were bidding when he marked how they chose out the chief rooms. Jesus watching them and he's seeing how these people are choosing out the chief rooms. They want the high seats. They want to be seen. And that's something that, hey, we got to be careful with as well. You got to be careful with as well. It's about humility. He said, and he put forth the parable to those which were bidding when he marked how they chose out the chief room, saying unto them, verse 8, when thou art bidding of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room. Hey, when you invited to a wedding, he's telling them, when you are invited to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest the more honorable man than you be bidding of him. Hey, because once you go and you try to put yourself up in high places, it's going to be a more honorable man that's going to come and be invited, more honorable than you. What happens? Verse 9, it say, and he that bade thee and him come and say to thee, give this man place. Hey, get up, give this man your seat. And you begin with shame to take the lowest room. Now you embarrassed because you did not humble yourself. You decided to be prideful and take on the highest places. And now, hey, this other man comes in and remove you from that place and give your seat to someone else. And now it said, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. That's why before pride, hey, you got to be humble. Look at verse 10 and say, but this is what we should do. Verse 10, but when thou art bidding, go and sit down in the lowest room, that when he that bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, friend, go up higher. All right, so take that low seat. And then it's a better chance that, hey, when the master comes or the high person comes or whoever's in charge comes, they say, hey, friend, go take go up front, go sit up at the highest seat. Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. Look at what this is all meaning. Look at what Jesus was just trying to tell them. Verse 11, for whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased. When you exalt yourself and put yourself above your position, or I put myself above my position, it said, whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased. You're going to be brought low. Or in certain situations, you'll be embarrassed. You'll be put to shame. And they say, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. And he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Look at this. Let's go over here to 1 Peter 5. 1 Peter 5. 1 Peter 5. And the title is Humility, Remove the Pride. Humility, and we must remove the pride. 1 Peter 5 and verse 5 and 6. We're going to look at two verses right here. 1 Peter 5 and verse 5 and 6. 1 Peter 5, we're going to read verses 5 and 6. It says, likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yeah, all of you be subject one to another and be clothed with humility. Hey, be clothed with humility. Be subject one to another. Don't be too above correction. You know, a younger brother correcting the older brother, you know, a sister correcting a brother. Hey, all of us need to be subject one to another, and don't be so high-minded where we can't be subject one to another. It said, and be clothed with humility, because, hey, once you got on the clothes of humility, once your mind is engulfed with being humble and humility, hey, you will be more subject to one another. You'll be able to take correction. Look at what he say. For God resisted the proud. You know, it's always that resistance, you know, with the one that's being prideful, and giving grace to the humble. That's what he does. He gives grace to those that are able to humble themselves, those that are able to listen and take correction. Verse 6, it say, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. In due time, you know, we got to wait. Sometimes we got to wait. And you know, a part of that being humble is patience. Not always easy, but that's something that's required of us in service of God. It says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. In due time. Let's keep going. Let's go over here to James chapter 4. James chapter 4. I'm going to read 2 verses right here. Same thing that the Lord was just telling us by the mouth of Peter. James chapter 4. And we're going to read 2 verses right here. Humility. Remove the pride. Humility. Remove the pride. James chapter 4. And we're going to pick it up in verse 6 and say, but he giveth more grace. He giveth more grace. Wherefore he said, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. And we all need that grace. We all need grace. So we all must, hey, remove the pride. We got to remove the pride. Verse 7, submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you, because ultimately, brothers and sisters, that's where the pride comes from. It comes from the devil. He influences our mind in whatever aspect the pride may come up, because pride is very broad. It comes in many different forms. It comes in many different aspects. You know, you could be a prideful person and not be able to take correction. You could be a prideful person and thinking you know more than everybody else. You could be a prideful person and not willing to change when you know you should change, and be disobedient and stiff-necked. And we all deal with a certain level of pride. The thing is, we just have to be able to recognize it and keep it out of us, and remove it out of our hearts and our minds. It gets us all. It rises up on us all. Look at the perfect example right here of humility. Let's go over here to Philippians. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3 through 9. Let's look at the perfect example of humility. Perfect example of humility. And we're going to just look at Jesus. And we almost finished Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3. Remember, here on a few scriptures, I like to just bring a few scriptures, you know, based on a subject and title. And this morning, the subject is humility. The subject is pride. But the title is humility, remove the pride. You know, we got to be humble. Philippians chapter 2, and we'll pick it up in verse 3. It say, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, in humility. That's what lowliness of mind means. In being humble, let each esteem other better than themselves. So this is what Paul is telling these Philippians. Hey, don't do nothing through strife or vainglory. You know, be humble and let each esteem other, you know. Give glory to somebody else. Esteem others better than yourself. Don't always try to make yourself seem better than everybody else. That's basically what he's saying. Verse 4, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. So don't get so caught up in what you got, but hey, what does somebody else need? You know, it's all good. We can always recognize all the stuff that we have, but we need to be every man also on the things of others. How can we help someone else? How can we give to someone else? You know, how can we help someone else's situation that may not be in the best situation? That's a part of humble mindset, the lowliness of mind. Look at verse 5. He said, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. You know, that's the ultimate example, Christ Jesus. Let's look at some characteristics of him. Verse 6, it say, who being in the form of God, so Christ Jesus was in the form of God, he thought it not robbery to be equal with God. You know, him and God was on the same page. You know, he was God. You know, who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but verse 7, he made himself of no reputation. That was Jesus. Every time Jesus was doing miracles, every time he stepped on the scene, hey, he always told them, be healed and don't tell nobody. You know, he was always trying to just do the work of the Father and without any credit. He didn't always looking to take no credit. That's why they say right here, Paul wrote this to the Philippians, telling them about Jesus Christ, that, hey, he made himself of no reputation, you know, and took upon him the form of a servant. That's another characteristic. Hey, he was a servant. And that's what we have to be. We have to be servants one to another. You know, that's why they said up earlier in verse 3, you know, let each esteem others better than themselves, and every man should look on the things of others. Yeah, that's what a servant does. You know, that's why I love that. Hey, I can be a teacher in the school system. You know, hey, I know the school system, hey, can be corrupt at times. I know the curriculum is the things that we teaching them, you know, may not always be the best for these kids, but hey, I always try to be a servant unto them. I always try to show them what it looks like to be a servant, to have a servant mentality, because that is a characteristic, hey, that you're going to need for the rest of your life. That is a characteristic that these kids can take out into the real world and use. And it all comes from God. It say in verse 7, but made himself of no reputation. That's humility. And took upon him the form of a servant. That's humility. And was made in the likeness of men. That's humility. Jesus Christ himself, hey, came into the flesh. He put on flesh and blood body and made himself in the likeness of men. You know, because we had to have a man to die for us to shed blood. We had to have someone just like us that bleeds like us to shed blood. These are just the characteristics of Jesus humbling himself. He made himself of no reputation. He took upon him the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of man. Let's keep looking. Let's keep going. Verse 8, and being found in fashion as of a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. See, this is the ultimate humility. Jesus Christ himself. You know, in other places we can see say for scarcely a righteous man, hey, for scarcely somebody to die for a righteous man. You know, you ain't I don't know nobody that's raising their hand and dying for their brother or their sister. But we find somebody who did that, and that's Jesus. This is a part of humility. This is how we have to humble ourselves so low for our brothers and sisters, just like Christ humbled himself, became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross for you and I. Christ died for the ungodly. You know, he died for the murderer. He died for the thief. He died for that brother or that sister that's raping, even the person that's raping young kid. That's what that Christ died for them. He died for the ungodly. He ain't no respect of persons. That's the ultimate humility. Look at verse 9. It say, wherefore God also hath highly exalted him. The Father highly exalted Jesus Christ. Why? And giving him a name which is above every name. All right. So we just want to come here to look at the humility of Jesus Christ. And what he did, he died for the ungodly. You know, he took on the form of a servant, made himself a no reputation. He wasn't going around saying, hey, yeah, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God. You better believe it. Nah, he wasn't doing that. He was just doing the work of the Father. He was showing his faith in the Father through his works. Matthew 18. We got one more after this. Matthew 18. Matthew 18. And this is the mindset we don't want to have. This is the mindset that we don't want to have when it comes to, this pride. This is the mindset we don't want to have. Look at these brothers. Look at the disciples. Look at their mindset, because this is all about a mindset. This is all about our mindset. This is all about, hey, our mindset, which is going to lead into our actions. And we got to make sure this prideful mindset, hey, we remove it. We remove it. Matthew 18 and verse 1. It say, at the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And that ain't even nothing important. That ain't no important question. Because if we all make it into the kingdom of heaven, hey, we all gonna be great. We all gonna shine like the brightness of the firmament. We are gonna have this power if we get into the kingdom of heaven. So even for the disciples to be even asking this question shows that their mindset isn't on the right thing. At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? That don't even matter. Verse 2, and Jesus called a little child unto them and set him in the midst of them and said, verily I say unto you, except you be converted in your mind, except you put off that fleshly and carnal mindset and become as little children, humble your mind. That's all he's telling you, not actually go back into your mother's womb and be a little child or actually be transformed back into a little child physically. No, he's telling them, except you be converted and become as little children in your mind, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. So while the disciples are asking the Lord, hey, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? He's letting them know, if you don't change your mind and get that pride out of your mind, wondering who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, who's the greatest disciple and all this and that, hey, you're not even going to get into the kingdom of heaven. And that's what we got to do. Look at what he tells them in verse 4. He sums it up for him. He said, whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, hey, you put on the mind of a child. You be able to be taught. You humble yourself as this little child. The same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. The same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Let's go to this last spot, Matthew chapter 5. Humility. Remove the pride. And we all deal with it. This isn't a lesson. It's not like Cam is above anybody. Nah, this is a lesson for all of us. We all deal with pride. Sometimes we have to be like, man, I said too much right then. We all have to get rid of the pride. Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 3 through 8. Matthew chapter 5. We're not going to read all this. We're going to just read a couple of these. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 3. This is, known as the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 3. It says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Verse 4. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. If you're mourning, hey, there's going to be a time when the Lord is going to comfort us. He said, hey, for you shall be comforted. That's an absolute. Verse 5, blessed are the meek. That's that humble. We know we read in the Old Testament, Moses was, known as the meekest man alive. Verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So, this kingdom, the kingdom of heaven that's coming down to this earth, You know, in order to inherit that, hey, we got to be meek. We got to be meek. Verse 6, blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And with that being said, brothers and sisters, that is the lesson this morning. Humility, remove the pride. And I thank you for your time. Thank you guys for tuning in this morning. Humility, remove the pride. This is a much needed lesson for all of us, just showing us and keeping in mind that, hey, pride can attack any of us at any time, and we must continue to stay humble. So with that being said, good morning and peace to everybody that's tuned in. Morning and peace to everybody that came in this morning. Hope y'all have a great day. Hope y'all have a great day, and hope y'all have a blessed Sabbath to come at evening. So with that being said, peace, blessings. Y'all have a great day. In Jesus' name, peace.